Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. You're a prick.
Keep that in.
What is up, guys? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another review. And for this review, Duncan, Kyle and myself have been checking out the new release from possibly hardcore's busiest band of the year, Cro-Mags. The band's new EP 2020 will be released digitally on December 11th via Mission 2 Entertainment and a Rising Empire even. So if you are a regular on our old YouTube channel,
why? Seek help.
Yeah. Find a hobby. You may remember way back in June.
Is it June?
Yeah. We reviewed the Cro-Mags album In the Beginning. So we thought it was only right that we'd jump back in and see what they have to offer on this late 2020 release. Now, clearly, Harley and the boys aren't letting a worldwide pandemic get in their way of being productive at all. This EP is titled 2020, and it plays as a kind of time capsule look into the burning dumpster fire of this year. And you can see that from the song titles. It's kind of a soundtrack to 2020. It's through its different stages. The EP is also 20 minutes and 20 seconds long. I see what you did there. The EP was recorded at Steve Zing's newly launched Trick or Treat studio, and the band brought back Arthur Risk, who produced the band's last full-length album In the Beginning.
That's risky business. I think I cracked that joke back in June, bringing it back. I think 6 months is long enough to let a joke lie before you bring it back, surely. Huh?
Oh yeah.
And you know what's
minutes.
Just as funny as it was the last time.
Beg to differ, but okay. Well, let's keep going.
When in Rome.
I'd kind of like to start there. Actually, I'd kind of like to start with the production of this EP, because it was one of the first things that kind of hit me when I pressed play on this EP. They haven't necessarily gone for the same type of production that they had on their full length.
Nope.
And to be honest, I think it's a good play by the band. It definitely separates the two releases. It doesn't come off sounding like these were tracks maybe left over from the In the Beginning recordings. It does make the EP feel like its own thing. Mm-hmm. It still feels very old school, which is classic Cro-Mags. It doesn't sound like, we just reviewed it recently, it doesn't sound like the new Hatebreed album, for example, which is very...
Hatebreed.
Yeah, it is very Hatebreed. It's very modern and polished sounding. But I'd say this EP, it's still very in keeping with the band's almost like vintage feel of the releases. It definitely felt a little darker in comparison to In the Beginning.
Yeah, I think it suits totally suits the songs. Yeah.
It kind of makes sense given the theme of the EP, but I felt a lot of the chord choices and the kind of lead work and the atmosphere, it felt a little bit more ominous on this release. And I think the production that the band and Arthur Risk went for on 2020, it really captures that feeling. Duncan, I'm going to start with yourself. Coming off a pretty strong album back in June, how did this compare for you?
So anyone that has, we should if we can link, we should link back to the June review so people can get an instant click. So yeah, when we did that review, we were joined by our buddy Baz, who was like an encyclopedia of I would say useful and useless knowledge on Cro-Mags. He knew fucking everything, like even down to like on a Tuesday he has his eggs scrambled. You know, like it was it was on that level of detail. But you know, coming off the legal battles and whatnot, the big kind of news was this was the main dude's kind of reinserting himself, or reasserting himself, so to speak, into doing Cro-Mags stuff. I said at the time I wasn't necessarily au fait. I thought they'd had one release before that, and it turns out that was an ignorant thing to say. They've had a lot more. So with that in mind, when we approached that, I come off it like pretty high on life. I thought it was a great, like, I loved the riffs, loved the playing, I loved how just punchy and impactful. It didn't waste any time and just got around to it. So to me, the cynicism seeps in when I hear 6 months later they've got a new EP and it's themed and it's all 2020 related, and I'm like, I need another reminder of how depressing 2020's been. And then I'll listen to it, and we were speaking just briefly before this come on. I prefer this to the album, if I'm honest. I love the production on this. Like, from the moment the kind of sample drum loop plays at the beginning, with that proper 90s vibe.
I love that thing. That's the Amen break. That's used in so many different songs. It's a drum beat that was recorded on a soul record in the 60s and has been sampled to death, and I fucking love it.
Yes, and Cro-Mags brought it in and did the Cro-Mag thing. It just comes in, then you get the rest of the band join in, and as an opener, Age of Quarantine it sets the stage. It gives you absolutely everything you need to know about this release. It's Cro-Mags at their kind of punchy best, I would say, and then the EP just doesn't really give a fuck from there. It just continues on. What I love about it, you get the gang vocals, you get great production on the guitar, the bass sounds fucking the tits, man. There's a couple of songs in here that open with just a drum beat and some bass playing, and Dave will tell you, one of my favourite things, and sadly it's underutilised in almost every genre out with hardcore, is just a bit of drums and some bass playing, and then the rest of the band can come in over that. Guitarists have a bit of an ego, and I'm not just saying that because we had a guitarist who had a bit of an ego about this, but guitarists are like, oh, the band's playing, I need to play, and I hate it. I every now and again, just let that bass player do what that bass player does and build up from there. And the two songs that they use that on, which I think might be Life on Earth and Crow Fusion, the final one, are great examples of that. Life on Earth is a fucking anthem and a half, man. I found myself walking about the house going, Life on Earth! Life on Earth! Just like when I'm washing the dishes, Life on Earth! Taking a shit, Life on Earth! Like, just like amazing, like absolutely just fucking brilliant. But there's a little bit of mix going on here. Violence and Destruction starts off a little bit different from some of the other tracks in here. Starts off kind of, I actually almost thought it was going to start off a bit Sky, because it kind of like element, and then they just when you think you're like, just like, no, it's Cro-Mags. Fucking punch to the face, boot to the dick. Here we go. Yeah, I love it. I think vocally they sound great. I think musically they sound great. Yes, it's gimmicky. Yes, it's 20 minutes and 20 seconds, and to be honest, I even when you read that detail out, and I told you I've listened to this 8 times today, you know, my eyes roll a little bit. I'm going, do we need the gimmick? But fuck it. They've constructed a very punchy, very great, pertinent sounding hardcore release, which, I mean, I liked that album. People go back and check it out. I was surprised at how much I liked that album, not necessarily being a fan of kind of 90s hardcore music, which I know that's Davey's bag, and Bazzy's as well to an extent. And they go back further than that. They're like way back. I think, was it late 80s, early 90s? Cro-Mags? So like way back. And I was like, oh, they've got one album. So, you know, by the time I'm hearing this, it's, to me, it just, I said at the time, it sounded relevant. I'm listening to this, it sounds relevant. And in stark contrast to Hatebreed, which we listened to last week, and the review will be somewhere. If it's not out, it will be out by the time this drops. Hatebreed to me sounded completely predictable and at times a bit generic for me. And Cro-Mags are doing a Cro-Mags release, but to me it sounds fresh and it sounds punchy, and I think the reason behind that is, see, if this was the only thing I'd heard from them this year, I would be a bit more like, oh, right. But the fact I've heard them do one thing, and like you say, come back with something which doesn't sound like outtakes, sounds like we're just going to write an EP and we're just going to capture it, and at times I think it sums up 2020 pretty fucking well. I mean, if you've watched TV or watched the news or just lived, I think that's why it plays so easy. You can get through a good couple of listens of this and just feel awesome about feeling shit. I think I'm like all over this. Like I genuinely think this is brilliant. So well done to the guys. And 2 releases. I feel fucking spoiled, man. I actually feel like they're like, see if they said, you know, February we're releasing another EP, you know, I'd be over the fucking. They could just keep every couple of months releasing something, and I'd be over the moon. Is it the most revolutionary thing you're going to hear this year? No. You know, are they bringing more to the table than they did on their album earlier in the year? No. But is it fucking awesome? Yes, and that's all that matters. So yeah, loved it. Thought it was great.
Nice. Kyle, as a had you listened to much Cro-Mags before this?
You know, there's a band out there called Cro-Magnon, which are like from the 60s or something, or 70s, from a long time ago, and I thought they were the only ones, but turns out not. So no, I haven't really heard much of this band before.
Okay. And had you heard
That's
that?
a really long way around to get around to saying no.
Had you heard in the beginning?
Yeah, I gave it a couple of listens through. It was
okay.
Very.
What did you make of this EP?
You know what? If you hadn't have said it was hardcore, I never would have guessed. This is not like typical hardcore for the genre, right? It's not. I don't know if this is what it sounded like back in the 90s. Because to be honest, I'm not really a fan of hardcore, but this is actually 90s, like
this is 90s.
Yeah, this is before it became all like beat downs and fucking for my friends, for my family, this is life. Bah! You know, like, before it became all windmilling and fucking dick swinging. Although I'm down with the dick swinging, so I'll take that back. Yeah, this is how it did. So like, I remember you gave me like, it was like a propane fucking like EP or an album way back when I think we'd known each other a couple of months at college. You were like, listen to this. I remember shoving it on and just going, it's so angry, I'm going to go back and listen to my Slipknot album. Like, it just like there was no off switch. They were just shouty all the way through it. But yeah, this is kind of typical like 90s hardcore.
That's great. I really like it. I'm going to go back to the 90s and find some more hardcore bands. Like, hardcore I listen to now is like...
I've got recommendations for you for days.
Right.
It's not a shelf unit he's building in the background there. It's a DeLorean, Dave.
Somewhere in here. An old man with white hair.
There's a kind of almost kind of slowed down thrash thing going on with the riffs, though, isn't
there?
Yeah,
it is. And like I mentioned for the Amen break at the beginning of the album, just hooked me in right away. I was like, you've used the fucking, you have. I don't know if it's just the snare drum. I didn't hear much of the Amen and the rest of the samples, but it was like, it's there. That's it. And with the bass layered over on top, you know I love bass. So I'm like, it hooked me in, and I'm like, this isn't typical hardcore. This is really good. Like.
Yeah.
It just hooked me in straight away. It didn't remind me too much of the last release. Maybe a little bit. I mean, it's obviously the same band, but it's definitely a different release. And at least it was another take on, we've been in lockdown. This was written under lockdown, like every other band we've heard this year.
Every press release this year. I'm actually, I like Lisa, if you're listening to this, you're probably not, but if you are, your people and your ilk and your profession need fucking all the gold medals possible for finding as many ways to use COVID in a creative way in a bit of a release. It's like, honestly, like everything I read, you know, like during the pandemic, like it must suck to have to write that, because you have to try and make it sound different every single time.
This one was written during the last 67 months of the lockdown.
What about that bass sound, Kyle? What but that
Fuck,
bass.
that bass sound is nice. I've been studying the hell out of it. I'm like, that is, it's meaty. It's got a bit of reverb on it too, which is actually the one thing I didn't like about this album. Is a little bit too much reverb on fucking everything. Like, the bass, it came in and it was like, ooh, a bit of reverb on the bass, I like that. And then, of course, the drums have it. And then the guitar came and it was like, why have you got reverb on that, guys?
It's 90s hardcore, isn't it, Dave?
Well,
we have one
fair
effect.
enough if they're sticking to the genre specifics, then fine. But it kind of washed out some sounds for me, but that's the only thing I didn't really like about this. I'm not kidding. The rest of it was so good. The lyrical content was like, okay, now I can tell it's hardcore, but it worked for what it is.
Yeah.
And the riffs were good, and the song structures were very good, and that, like, the last track when they just had a jam session and they picked the best bits and sliced it together, I thought that was a really good idea. It was like, it's instrumental, and you know what? I heard a couple of Nine Inch Nails influences in there on some of the guitar leads. It was like, oh, that's very Trent Reznor. Oh, it is. So, like, it all came together for me, and I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I've listened to it. I mean, it's 20 minutes long. How many times can you fit 20 minutes into a day?
It's very, very easy to go back to. You know what I'm thinking, though? I'm thinking, see, Davy Boy over there has been kind of aloof with this. He didn't commit when I mentioned it earlier on. In fact, when I said earlier on that I listened to a lot, I went, oh, really? And that kind of, you know, I'm playing poker. I might have a flush. I don't know poker terms. Really shouldn't use this analogy.
That's a bathroom term.
I have a royal spike. You know what I mean? And you don't know what I'm doing here. I've got a set
king.
I've got a set of knives. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It could be anything. So, but he'd been very aloof with it, and then he made me go first, and then he made you go, and he's still not committed to it, which makes me think
hidden ninja.
Well,
he might not like this actually. Dave might just be setting us up to go, you fools.
Of course you like the only hardcore release I don't, you fucks.
Yeah, well, this is the thing that I get worried about, and I talk about this with black metal when I'm like that. Oh, you know, like there's a black metal album I really like, and I see it this one, and black metal fans are like, yeah, it sucks, and I'm like, well, that's how I know I don't like the genre, is because like, so the fact that me and you are both on the same page, Dave, are we right or are we wrong?
Oh, interesting.
Dave.
There's points from each of your statements so far that I've agreed with. I think for me anyway, this one, I think, like, for the most part, this is another crowd-pleasing release from the Cro-Mags. It ticks a lot of boxes. It has the attitude, it has the personality in spades, and you know the classic Cro-Mags riffing that we've come to know and love. But I thought there was definitely a few bits and pieces that caught my attention or piqued my interest that I didn't get on that last release. The hip hop drum loop intro on Age of Quarantine definitely caught me off guard. I was not expecting the first track to sound like that and build like that. But I liked the way it unfolded into some really angsty riffs and Harley screaming Age of Quarantine over and over. I thought it was a really good opener on the EP. Track 2 was it's titled 2020. It's when I started to notice that lead work that I mentioned. For me, that darker tone throughout the verses really elevated the track from a kind of typical Cro-Mags full throttle, like no fucks given affair, to something a bit more menacing, which I actually really liked. The other track that really caught my ear was Violence and Destruction.
Oh, again, the intro to that song is so good. It's like, it's almost reggae.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
well, that's what I was thinking. When I was listening, I was like, what? I was getting a kind of like...
I think someone in that band is a massive drum and bass fan, because they've got the Amen break, which is hugely used in drum and bass and jungle music, and they've got reggae, which is also like a huge influence for drum and bass. I think one of them might be a massive drum and bass fan, and they're just like inching it into the band.
Well, if you go back to like a lot of the kind of old kind of dub punk stuff, it's very very similar in terms of the chords and the kind of strumming pattern stuff, and that's what I was picking up from that. You know, with the kind of it's got an underlying bass line, but those kind of echoey kind of guitar chords playing it definitely gave me that kind of dub punk.
There was a moment during the recording when, and this is allegedly, this is a story, fly on the wall story. I'm smiling, which gives away the fact that it's not true. When the guitar started fiddling around and everyone was getting a wee bit concerned, and it was like, don't worry about a thing, because every little thing is going to be alright. There we go.
Oh my god.
Can you paste in that sound effect? Wah, wah.
I was going to say at least a badumch. Come on, Dave. You're a drummer and you're on this record. You're on this recording. If you're not here to do that,
I could even muster that up, Duncan. After that, I really couldn't.
There was another bit in it when they thought they heard an out of tune note and they looked at the guitarist and it was like, it wasn't me.
Are you just quoting Shaggy? Is that you just quote Shaggy there?
Well, you know, as a self-identified Mr. Lover man, you know. The heart wants what the heart wants, Dave. Anyway, you were saying
self-proclaimed and self-practicing.
Yep, 3 times nightly.
Yeah, what I was saying was I wasn't expecting that type of intro from that track, but I did enjoy it. You know, before the kind of track kicks into gear and the hardcore punk riffs and the kind of drum starts to flow. There was also a lot of nice melody on that track from Harley, which he's done in the past, but I think he really nails the melodies on this one. There's a good choice of melody, and the tone fits really well with the tracks. The last track, though, Crow Fusion, I was the same as you guys. When that bass kicked in, I was like, oh my god, just thick and really kind of clangy sounding. Like, I just loved the bass tone. And as Kyle says, it was like a 20-minute freestyle jam that they have kind of cut down for that last track. It's very funky in places, and it's very, it feels very chaotic. That, you know, there's moments where each member they go a bit apeshit on their instrument, and I think that's supposed to kind of represent the kind of type of year that we've had anyway. Overall,
why did I get a feeling there's a butt coming? Like, you know, the way he's lined this up, there's a big bad butt coming.
There's not a bad butt. I didn't think it was as good as in the beginning. I'm not going to lie. Right. But I did rate that pretty high. I gave that a 4.5. I really liked In the Beginning. I felt some of the songs, or I felt a lot of the songs on In the Beginning did stick with me more than they did on the 2020 EP. I think there's a lot of good moments on this. I like the fact that they had a bit of more like experimental sections on it, and I like the kind of darker elements on the tracks like 2020, which were cool. I do prefer the production on In the Beginning though. It did lean more towards my taste. I prefer it when it has that a bit more bite overall, you know, in the kind of drum and guitar area. And it does remind me of the older Propane albums, I'm not going to lie. But, you know, aside from that, it's still a very good release. I still thoroughly enjoyed it, and at 20 minutes and 20 seconds long, it is one that you can just batter on, you know, and listen to 3 or 4 times. It's really easy to listen to. So yeah, for the most part, I did thoroughly enjoy this. As I said, production-wise, preferred their album production, and I did feel some of the tracks, or more of the tracks on In the Beginning, did kind of have more of a lasting impression for me.
As the producer said, Dave, that's the risk you take. Here until Thursday. Remember, and tip your pages.
Rating wise, where are we sitting on this one, Duncan? Where are you sitting with 2020?
So, if memory serves, I think I gave the previous one 4. So I've got that in the back of my head that I gave it a 4. So I'm going to basically steal your grade for the album. 4.5. I think this one is better. You know, it's maybe the production more aligns with me, but I like the stuff that I think you get a whole lot of bang for your buck here in terms of styles, fusion, like the whole work. This is a really, 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 really good, concise, nice bite. I would go as far as to say, you know, if you have one, Dave will disagree. If you have enough time here to check out something from the Cro-Mags this year, I would check this out first, and then if you like what you hear here, you know, jump and check the album after. It's such an easy listen, man. Such an easy listen. Very angry, but really, really rewarding. 4.5 from this guy.
4.5, nice. Kyle, what about yourself?
Going in completely almost blind and not realising it was hardcore. But I really loved it. I think everything about it was really good, so I'm going to go exactly the same, 4.5.
Ooh, nice. I'm switching grades with Duncan here. I'm going for a 4. I did think it was really good. I did enjoy it, but I did prefer In the Beginning. in the end. If you want to check this one out, it drops on December 11th on Mission 2 Entertainment and Horizon Empire. If you want to check out the band, facebook.com/real Cro-Mags. That is the review. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. Thanks for checking out the review. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.